Namaste and welcome to Detours with me, Anuradha Goyal, where I talk to some very interesting personalities about journeys of all kinds. Namaste and welcome to another episode of Detours. Today we have Priyanka Mohan with us, who is the daughter of a performing artist of Yakshagana through a group called Yaksha Degula, which means the temple of the Yaksha. It's a art form from the coastal Karnataka, just like every part of India has some art form that people used to perform, especially during festivals, during evenings, when TV and screen format of entertainment was not part of our lives. People used to sing, dance, and entertain themselves through creative expression. But these art forms have now become performing art forms, and we have groups like this preserving those art forms for us and keeping them alive through performances. So, Priyanka ji, welcome to Detours. And let us begin by understanding what is Yakshagana.
Like you mentioned, Yakshagana is a folk theatre form of coastal Karnataka. That means a range of regions in parts of Karnataka and even Kerala have been practicing this. And, we don't know exactly when it started, but approximately there is a trail of this 700 to 800 years ago. The art form emerged, and it's, of course, evolved through the times. But basically, it's a storytelling. It is also associated with temples. So if you see, there are Yakshagana Melas associated with temples in the coastal belt. And a lot of families offer a Yakshagana performance as an offering to the deity of their choice and what they follow as a family. And that's how it's been practicing. And in the last 50, 60 years, there's also troops like ours that has emerged who are not associated with the temple, but for the sheer love of the art form and how we can also see to take the art form beyond seeing that as just a ritual is something some of the artists have been working towards. And Yakshagana has the components of music, dance, and theater. And it's also known for its aharya, the costumes, vibrant costumes. Right. And it's usually performed through the evening and whole night. One particular story is picked up from mythology or various epics, and that story gets narrated through various characters that come. What I wanted to understand, Priyanka ji, is the association of the word yaksha. So I have studied many art forms of India, and this is the only one where the yaksha comes into place. And yakshagan literally means the song of the yaksha. Is there a documented association of yakshas? Not that I know of in the books and from the artists that I have also worked and from also seeing or doing my own reflection of the art forms. It's largely, maybe it's something that we've lost in the process also. What was the exact association with the spirits? But the one thing that I can tell the association is this is believed to be branched out from Bhutakola. I mean, if you've seen Kantara, right. But that is heavily very ritualistic and devotional, and there are only certain kinds of people, and that has another dimension to the art form itself, other than performance, right? And Yakshagana is believed to have emerged out of that, and that's why that's the only association. Otherwise, if you see the stories and the way it's presented, it's all based on Vishnu, Shiva, and other god. Very less association, but it could also be that we've lost this association in the thing. But the only connection that I can make today is because it's emerged from Bhutakola, and certain aspects of the spirits come from it. I also find a very strong resemblance to Kathakali, which is also performed through the night, which also is a dance drama.
and again elaborate costumes, and it's not performed too far from the region where Yakshagana is performed. So maybe there are two different forms of the same form of an art, right?
Yes, in fact, you go to any region, you will find different Yakshaganas.
Hmm.
And Yakshagana itself, there's another history that says it's emerged from Kuchipudi, the
Oh.
region
Hmm.
of Kuchipudi. And if you see Kuchipudi, there's Kuchipudi Yakshagana also
Oh,
in Kuchipudi as well.
okay.
So there is a form of Yakshagana. I mean, it might not be called Yakshagana
Right.
in every state, and southern states for sure.
Right.
And I've heard there are similar forms in different parts of the country. So
Yes.
yeah, so I would say that maybe as artists also moved regionally, they've adapted to the cultures and the regional thing, and has been adapted. Could have been one of the explanation, but the formats are there. In fact, even within Karnataka, there is Dodata, which is another form of Yakshagana itself, which is performed in the northern part of Karnataka, where
Mhm.
this is mostly to coastal Karnataka.
Right.
But the format is very similar. So
Okay, right, great. Talk about the region where it is performed or any particular temples. You said it is traditionally associated with the temple or typical temples or any specific temples which kind of are the flag bearers of this art form. Take us to
there
coastal
are
Karnataka.
Yeah. So the whole coastal Karnataka, Mangalore, Udupi, Kasaragod, and even parts of Sagra, Shimoga, all of these have. That's where you will see Yakshagana. And if you're driving on the highway, there is no chance you will miss, except
Mhm,
in the rainy season because it's pouring and you cannot get out in Western Ghats. That's why
mhm,
even today, 6 months in the year, Yakshagana melas are operating, and the other 6 months is usually there are art forms that have emerged out of Yakshagana called Talamadle, which is, indoor, Chikmela, which is only two people doing it. Those emerged because rainy season you cannot venture out and something that you can do within a house. So you cannot miss when you're in any of this. And there are range of temples. Actually, many of the temples like Dharmasthala has a team. There is Katil, which has a team. So every big temple in that whole region, as you traverse, have melas of their own,
mhm,
and the deities also vary, and the performances are mostly, again, they also choose if you go to Mangalore side, there are like there's another form of Yakshagana called Tenkutittu. And as you come down, as you go up, sorry, Udupi and above, it's called Badagutittu. That's the form that we practice predominantly. So there are differences, but the structure of it is very similar across. And deities vary, but the way of performing, it is still a family that hosts these melas, and it begins. The actual performance is believed to have begins with the artist in the green room getting into
mhm,
the character. So that's why in the green room itself, there's also chauki. Chauki is the green room. Chauki
mhm.
mane. That's where there's a puja that starts, and then the artist starts. There is no concept of makeup man in true sense, but now, of course, with people not learning different thing. But usually, if you take a professional Yakshagana artist, they get into the process of getting ready because they're getting into the character. It takes a good 2.5 hours for you to get ready. So there's a good enough time for you to get into the character. And from there, deity is worshipped, the offering is done, and then a series of performances happen. And then again, you end it with offering and thanking the family that was hosted. So that's usually, so this pattern remains, whichever is a temple that is there. And like I said, every day, 6 months, there will be melas that are hosted. Unfortunately, now, because there are not enough people watching through the night, the duration has been cut short. So you will see by 1:30 the play ends. These days, very few do it full night, but otherwise, it would typically start at around 7 in the evening and go on till next day morning 6:37.
So it is typically sunset to sunrise kind of a art form, right?
Yeah.
So are you saying that it is still being patronized by patrons who kind of host the team, or who for certain, maybe for a votive reason, that a wish fulfillment, they host it? right? So they asked the deity for something, and the wish was fulfilled. So they have this performance done, which means the patronage actually comes from the people instead of an institutionalized patronage, right?
Yeah.
But tell me, if I'm a traveler to Karnataka or coastal Karnataka, what are the best temples to visit to see this art form in non-rainy season days?
Yeah, so it doesn't of course, temple also hosts the performances, but largely these performances are happen at the fields of the house who is hosting. For example, I'm a family who's,
Mhm,
I might have an offering that says I'm going to host this every year
mhm,
for the betterment of my family, whatever my wishes.
mhm,
So I will host it in my premises. So that's one kind of melas that is there. So usually that's where but it's open to public. They will not restrict saying it's only for my family who's come,
mhm,
because it happens in an open field and
mhm,
usually everybody attends
mhm,
the show. And in the last few years, we've also seen tent melas that has emerged, which means that uh, they put up a show, the melas, because they anyway have the people.
mhm,
This thing. So that shows usually it happens highway and open air mostly. It's nothing in an auditorium. And there's no specific place. They also keep shifting from this thing. And then the temple hosted shows are very specific for occasions. Like, for example, there's a temple, Narsimha temple in Saligrama. There is a Rathotsa that happens in January. For sure, you will find a Yakshagana performance there. And
mhm,
then when you come to Kota, which is near Saligrama itself, there is a Hande temple there,
mhm,
Vishnu temple. They have an annual ritual that happens in May, April, May,
mhm.
and there will be a show that they will host
So it is
during
a
that time.
part of the temple jatra in a way.
Yes, yes.
Right? Maybe it's an idea for you that you can put up a calendar of these up somewhere, so that people can, attend it while they are visiting these places. So, by any chance, is it associated with certain festivals apart from these annual jatras? Like any particular festival, if they are associated with?
Not really, but Navaratri is special for this thing, because there is, I told you, right? There are certain smaller aspects of the art form that has emerged,
Mm-hmm.
like Talamadle, Huvina Kolo, and Chikmela. Huvina Kolo becomes very popular during. So what is that exactly? It's a Yakshagana format, but kids, they go to houses carrying sticks with flowers,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a music ensemble also that goes with them, and they go, and there is no pre-booking or not, I will invite. They'll just come to your house, perform like 15-20 minute of a Yakshagana performance without dancing, because again the space is a constraint. So they said the Bhagavatar, the singer will sing, and then the children will narrate a story of
Mm-hmm.
one particular this thing, that converse dialogue happens, they end it, and they receive something from the family. Earlier it used to be rice or this thing, now they give certain token of this thing and they move to the next. And this, you will predominantly see this happening only in Navratri and not during other times much. And Talamadle is also another form where elders do a similar thing, where it's just for a verbal dialogue is the key in Talamadle. The verbose, there is no dancing. The singer sings and then the this thing. So that also happens through the night, but it's hosted in a house.
Right. So it reminds me of what we as kids used to do during the Shera, which is again in Navaratri, is that we wanted to build this Ravan to burn. So we would actually go from house to house, collect things. So somebody would give us wood, somebody would give us something, somebody would give us something to
Mm.
eat, and then and somebody would give us money, and then we'll collect and make a Ravan and then burn it. So I guess, and then we do it the similar thing for Lodi, So we go from house to house, we sing Lodi songs, and we get something. Again, earlier days it used to be peanuts or jaggery or mithai or something, and now it's all turned into money. So I see this tradition of visiting, the neighborhood homes by kids again as a very common thread at different points in time. But I want to ask you, when you say Navaratri, which Navaratri do you mean? The one
Oh,
with
that's it. That's it.
Dashera
Yeah.
Navaratri. Okay, so that's a good time to see the performance in temples, right? Also,
Yeah, I mean, there is, like I said, it's not very, yeah, but you will see a lot more. It's
lot
not
more.
a fixed thing, but yes,
Okay.
around that.
Okay, so now let's come down to the art form itself. Tell us about the typical themes that you perform on. So I know it's, you said epics, and I'm assuming it's primarily Mahabharat because it gives you a large canvas to play. So, are there any specific themes of Mahabharat or Ramayana or any other stories of our deities which are more popular?
There are a few that are very popular because
Mm-hmm.
people like it, and then
Mm-hmm.
you keep doing more of
Repeating it.
that. Mahishasura Martini, that is like really popular,
Oh.
especially in Tenkudettu.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of melas do it because people ask for it, and
Oh.
that's I think the one of the more stories that is performed, but mostly in Tenkudettu, the southern this thing as well. Otherwise, typically stories of Krishna that becomes a
Kansavar.
lot of Kamsavada, yeah, it's more, I mean, I would say if more a city urban story that gets
Mm-hmm.
performed a lot because the story is simple and this thing. But if I have to stick to the coastal Karnataka itself, a lot of stories around Krishna, Mahabharata and Ramayana typically, but there are a few like Krishna, Arjuna, Kalaga, that's popular. Karna story is popular. Shrasena is very popular. Abhimanyu. So Daksha Yagna is popular. So some of these are, and it's also seasonal. It's like the melas will decide that this year this is our predominant story that we will do. Of course, they will also do a few others, and then they keep changing it. And that's also the way. And so that different melas perform, and then we'll also say, oh, today Dharmasthala Mela is doing this. We know that this is the piece that they will be doing. So that's also is there. But unfortunately, there are over 400 plays that are written
Mm-hmm.
in Yakshagana. And I would say not more than 50 get performed regularly.
Mm-hmm.
There are repeat of the same shows. Like, for example, when you come to us only, we do Kamsavade the most because, we get asked of, can you do it for 5 minutes? Can you do it for 2 minutes?
Mm-hmm.
What kind of a story? You need to tell a story that everybody knows. And usually some of these stories are some things that people know. So we end up doing it because the audience is different.
Mm-hmm.
So constraints like these, and today there are a few people who would have done a lot of work in getting a few of these structured, as in at least do it once, so people have a reference to know how it is,
Mm-hmm.
and and then you just keep repeating that. Also, that also has been the thing. But there are these small efforts individuals and organizations are putting to see how can we start also looking at other performances that has been written, but largely most of these come from Mahabharata, Ramayana, Purana, one of those episodes, and that is elaborated. You go into the detail because it has to be performed through the night, right? So it is elaborated version of the stories.
Right. So, has there, just a curiosity question, has there been any experimentation with New Age stories?
Yeah. So in fact, I think last 10-15 years, very interesting trend that has come in melas also is, of course, they don't try these during the ritual, the 6 months of where they're doing an offering. But there's the other 6 months they go to cities like Bangalore and they host shows in auditoriums and everything, right? So they come up with plays, I remember once Apta Mitra, the movie became very popular. So they did a Gana on that same story, but a Yakshagana version.
Mhm.
But I would say like Yakshadegulu for the last 30 years, we've been doing on social issues. We have been empaneled with the Ministry of Information and Broadcast. Anything that the government is focusing on reaching to masses. We've performed in every village of Karnataka on topics like RTE, topics like AIDS, topics like, we've tried. We've written the story such a way that it'd be able to. The most recent being we did it for the Customs Act for the Department of Income Tax, Customs Tax. So, to talk about why custom acts came. So
Mhm.
there is experimentation. Of course, it's only in pockets that this has happened. Largely, people try and stick to. It's also there are challenges for this to happen. Um, one is today, like you said, there's a section of demand that is there because it's associated with temple rituals and offerings.
Mhm.
So people have booked shows for 20 years in certain temple melas.
Mhm.
So even if you want to host today with this temple, you might not get a slot because of this thing, right?
Mhm.
So
Oh.
the demand is there, but you don't see that many youngsters taking up Yakshagana because it's not aspirational, not a means for livelihood. There are other forms that have emerged, like gig economy has come. There's so much I can earn if I'm not doing this, right?
Right.
So that is not there. So a lot of times the struggle is also saying that okay, there's somebody who's just like showing little interest, you get pulled into a professional team, you start doing and then the scope to groom that person to go beyond, think beyond
Mhm.
this
Mhm.
is some of these are some of the constraints that we are seeing. And whereas in Yakshagana, it's very this thing that the demand in the temple side is very high, but the quality and the supply that will come is something that we'll have to work on there.
Right. It has to become a livelihood as well,
Yeah, yeah.
to an extent, right? So that brings me to the next aspect, which is the music, which is the core of this art form. So talk about what kind of music it is. Is it specific to this, or is it like any other music? How do plays get written? So you spoke about writing. So are there plays which were written, let's say 400 years ago or 500 years ago, or are they being written? Who are the key people who've written? So introduce us to the song and dance of Yakshagana.
Yeah. So Bhagavatar, who's a singer,
Hmm.
is the conductor of the play. He's the most respected in the team
Mhm.
because they play a very key role in crafting. I mean, I would say he's the director of the whole
Mm,
show.
mm, mm,
So music is the key for Yakshagana as well. Bhagavatar, usually earlier days, one person used to sing the
mhm,
entire night. They used to sit at around 6 and then would not move till morning 6. That, but now, of course, there are people who keep changing. But the idea is he conducts the play. There is no concept of Sutradhar in Yakshagana. Bhagavatar is the Sutradhar. There's also, I've read this where it was earlier, the singer used to dance as well as sing.
mm.
And then they started differentiating, saying, I will do the dancing, you do the singing. It's evolved also. But that's why it's very prominent and very important in the whole thing. And this music is very specific to Yakshagana. Yakshagana, if you ask the artist, they wouldn't want to call it a folk art form because it is also very structured. There's talas, there are ragas that are associated, and there are certain structures that you need to follow, which is also disappearing because people are not getting into the. There was, I would also
Tell us,
clarify.
go into little detail about what the
Yeah,
structure is and what are these
yeah,
ragas. Mm,
yeah. I might not get into the raga details because I'm not a Bhagavatar as a domain expertise, but I'll get into some details. Yakshagana has always been a Guru Shishya Parampara. There was no concept of formal learning of this whole art form, right? It's like I'm a youngster, I get inducted in the team, and there is a process in which I grow into different roles that I
organically. Huh?
organically and you see, but that didn't happen like I will just do something and go. I used to sit with the environment was always talking about the art form, giving information as to what kind of song that I need to sing for this particular thing, if I have to talk very specific to Bhagavatar. Even in the costume, what kind of costume will a Krishna wear in this particular story vis-a-vis to a story where it is still Krishna, but he's depicting a different emotion, doing a playing a
A
different role.
different
So these
scene. Huh?
So these nuances are, getting lost in today's this thing. And very specifically to, if we have to come into this thing, there are, 7 talas in Yakshagana, and there are a few popular ragas, like Janjoti is very popular. There are very typical ragas. Of course, there is an alignment. If you see classical music and this thing, it will not be very different. The talas are slightly different, but the ragas are still very similar. But Yakshagana is known, they also call it the opera of India, right? So it's really high pitched. There's a certain kind of needed. I mean, if you see the history, it's performed in open air. There was no concept of mic. You have to be loud for, 500, 600 people sitting and
All Indian folk art forms are loud, and for the
yes.
same reason. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. So, I mean, that's why it is. And so that has been there. So these structures are there. But unfortunately, today, it's nobody's getting into the details of learning this because, I mean, if I'm a youngster, if I have to talk about myself, if I have a good voice, I have good sense of rhythm and singing, I have a Indian Idol that is more more attractive than a Yakshagana, right? So a lot of good singers also get attracted to the larger that are available today, and hence, there are a few who are really passionate about the art form who kind of get stuck. So there is that gap. But in Yakshagana itself, you begin the Bhagavata's role starts from right from the green room, where like I said, Chowki Puja, the green room puja, he's the one who will conduct it. And he's also the one, usually, who is telling the team about how the story should go. Because my grandmother might have seen Bhishma Vijaya probably more than 100 times. But she doesn't get bored seeing the same show because that's the beauty. That's why it is still a folk art form, because every artist doing this will bring in their own perspective of doing this, right? But there still needs to be a method in the madness, and that's what the Bhagavatar does. He will ensure that, he'll give that structure to the team, saying that he will not go beyond this storyline for today's performance. And those instructions usually artists, like when I'm performing, I would rely on the Bhagavatar to give. And through the stay, as the performance goes as well, right? So there are certain roles where there is a lot of dancing. And there are certain roles there is very less of dancing. So that, and even the Bhagavata, the musicians, the instrumentalists will also rely on the Bhagavatar to take the lead on how the song would go. And there's no concept of rehearsals in Yakshagana. So, right. So, because every day in 6 months you're performing and you're performing with your team, there is this unsaid understanding and the chemistry that you have within the team. But that's why Bhagavatar is important, because he holds the fort. He will take the story, ensuring that maybe I'm a newcomer, I'm enthusiastic, I want to dance more, but he will ensure that it is not. And I think some of the very famous Uppur, he's been instrumental in making Yakshagana also outside, bringing some structures outside for me, making it easy for others to learn, because it's also hard sometimes to just learn passing it verbally. So they've done a lot of work in documenting these tala ragas, how should you use, what should you do when. There's also Karling Nada, who attracted a lot of youth into Yakshagana. I mean, he created a wave. He passed away, but he created a wave where he made Yakshagana very aspirational for the youth, probably at a time where it was again drifting away. So there, there's like recently there's Patla Satish, who also brought that wave back in the last 5-6 years. He sang a song in a movie, also Kannada movie, and there's a very big fan following. But usually you see the fan following, it's for the Bhagavata, because they're that important. They play a very key role.
Right. So talk about the writing also, any
Right.
particular ones.
So a lot of, like, the 400 stories that I've written, some are artists themselves, but it's also, certain people who are not artists themselves also who have written, because literature is something that somebody who's really learned also have to write. But they sit with the Bhagavatar to understand the construct of how The script, I mean, there's only padyas, the songs are written. There is no scripting of the dialogues that happens. Usually, the sense is the Bhagavata will sing the padya, the song, and the artist will just elaborate in words what the song meant. So which means that the padya is the key. So now in the literature, most of them have been professors who've written this down, but earlier it's been also Bhagavatar with a key support of certain learned individuals who were able to write well. That's how it is. But only in the last 100 years a documentation of these have done. Otherwise, it's just passed on. Like even today, if you want me to sing something, it's I because I've done it so many times, I sing it. But that concept of writing and learning was not there earlier. It's only in the last 50 years you see, and it's all published now. There's an effort that's happened where digitally also they've published, even to a certain extent where we were not giving the credit of the author of the play while performing. Such practices have come in now to say that, where we've been told, we had to be told by certain people saying that literature in Yakshagana is important, and please call out and give the credit to people who've written. Like, for example, Madhukar Bolar, he's the author of Sudarshana Garva Banga that we will be presenting on Sunday. And then Siddhakatte Vishwanath Shetty, he's written Panchajanya. It could be a story from Mahabharata, but what kind of songs will come? Yeah. So that there are this thing. Literature, again, now the effort is a lot of it was handwritten. Now that has been digitized so that anybody has access to some of these. But yeah, it's on the government side.
Let's say a lot of these bhakti poets during last 400, 500 years time frame have also written lot of poetry that is performed by people. So is that also performed by Yakshagana artists?
There are a few that are infused in the plays, but a single play will not have the entire of some of these popular pieces.
Okay, so now let's come down to the visual element, the costumes. So what makes how are those costumes created? What are the typical elements that define the costume of a Yakshagana artist?
Uh, that also has evolved. I would say, I mean, just in front of my eyes, I have seen so much of evolution, right? But I'll still stick to the traditional way of doing. Usually, wood is something that's largely used. Unfortunately, today they are getting replaced by plastic. But any ornament that you see, it's all made of wood, which is carved and, stitched on, a gunny bag. And then there is a foil that is put on the wood so that it looks bright and vibrant. Largely gold and silver is what you will see on the wooden pieces. And there are, of course, clothes that you wear on that. And there's a very typical Kasesire in Badagutittu. Again, the ahaya is very different in Tenkutittu and Badagutittu. Because if you see Badagu, the one that we practice, it's very red and yellow based. And Tenkutittu is a lot of purple, black based. But the components are, usually you see it's like a warrior. This thing. There's a Yadehara, there's an armor that, there is Bhujakirti. Usually that's what you see, and there's a headgear. Which also differs from character to character. Usually, young princes, Krishna, such kind of characters have this leaf-shaped one, which today it's done by thermocol. This thing, and all pieces are, and it also makes sense because the traditional one is made of hay, and there are stacks of hay. So now, if I'm of this height, the headgear I will need is a little longer than probably somebody who's shorter, right? So that kind of there was no resources for people to have different kinds of sizes for different kinds of people. So that way, I think we were very ahead in Yakshagana. So it was stacks of hay. So for my height, I might probably stack 8 bands of hay and then cover it with a cloth. And then, there are these ribbons that will beautify it. So that is an elaborate process. Just to do that, the headgear for the headgear, it takes 2 hours if you go into the tradition. But today, if the show is only for 15 minutes, it makes no sense for you to spend 2.5 hours in just getting ready. Hence, it's also evolved because of the needs of the current day. But the kasesire, what I was talking about, is another typical element of the costume, which today there's only a few families left, I'm told, who weave the sari, which is it's a checkered red and yellow sari that is worn. On top of that, you wear all the other costumes. So, yeah, largely wood based, and headgear is not a single piece that you see. It looks like that, but it's all separate elements that is tied to make to look like a single piece.
So you said some characters have a leaf shaped. What are the other shapes for other characters?
I don't know how to call it. This is a kirita, which is like a cylindrical with two wings sort of a thing. And then there is mundaso, which is a very huge headgear. And it's usually for probably senior, like Karna. He's a little old and still a warrior. So, he would usually have this mundaso, which is really big. And there are also colors. There are green, red, black, depending on what character you're playing. Like a Salva would be red because he's also has a evil touch to it. So that is there. And there's also the tribal character, Kirata, it's called. So I mean, the imagination is very funny. For a normal person, you would do a leaf shape like this. For a tribal one, it is done slant. And with little leaves and other things that are done. So there is a lot that you play
So
around,
there's a
and
lot of codification in the costume itself.
yeah, a costume is a highlight. It talks a lot because it's also through the night, and it gives, and that's what the piece we are also trying to see is everything has a meaning in what. I cannot I say if I'm even the makeup, I cannot do the same makeup for everything. Even if it's Krishna, then there is a way to say what I'm doing for which kind. So that's very interesting. There's Nama on the face. That is what differs a lot of times. If you're a Kamsa, then it is horizontal. And even if in the vertical, there are different kinds of Namas for different characters for the place. So some of these knowledges are very interesting. And even demon character is very it's even more elaborate. The face is almost like Kathakali's that whole white rice thing that they do it. It takes a lot of time, and the headgear is more elaborate because that's and it's usually very interestingly, all of these are also placed in the middle of the story so that people are dozing off. Then there is this demon element with fire, walking. People also get energized. The comedian is very different. So that's how these are.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So you're also expecting the audience to understand this codification over a period
They
of time.
understood at a point. I would say, like my grandmother, she's just grown up and she knew. I mean, this is from I've been hearing her talk about some of these things, saying that Krishna doesn't come like this. Arjuna has to be like this. Because people have seen, they know in coastal Karnataka. Unfortunately, that's the kind of audience we also need, an intelligent audience, so that the audience can also question, saying that this is the thing. But we are losing that bit of it.
So, this is what I have understood from my study of various art forms that even in sculptures, even in paintings, the familiarity of the story is assumed. So you can depict the whole of Ramayana with one scene because you know that through this one scene, the audience knows the rest of the story. So people know the story. They're not coming here to learn the story. They are here to enjoy a different rasa of that story.
I think the experience of how you can take audience with you really.
Right. So that brings me to the instruments also because it's all live performance. What are the typical instruments used?
There's a madale, which is like a smaller version of mridanga. again made out of wood and animal skin. And there's Chande. Chande is very typical to Yakshagana, and Kerala also you will find Chande. And again, there are in these both these instruments also there are variations for the tone of it. There are certain high pitched ones. There are certain instruments for low pitched. But Chande is the one usually even in
What
today's
does a
auditorium.
chande look like?
Chande is a cylinder. It's a drum. So it's a wooden cylinder capped with a animal skin on both ends, and usually there's a stick that you use to play the chande, and the matle is like a mridanga. You use a hand to play that, and it's a horizontal cylinder. These two are very prominent. Of course, in Tenkutittu, there is something called Chakratala, which is a round, big symbol where you make the. It's also used in temples, so that is there. That is also used in Tenkutittu. Bhagavata uses a tala, which is the usual symbol, right? So that is also. These are the 3-4 things that are used in Yakshagana. Harmonium is also there, but today it's replaced by electronic. You will not see anybody using the typical harmonium. They all use a electric harmonium.
Okay, right. Uh, if somebody wants to be a Yakshagana artist, what are the avenues available for them today?
Today, like I said, in the last 50, 60 years, it's also become institutionalized, the learning of the thing. So basics is usually where they learn in some of the kendras. There are residential learning spaces that are there in different parts of Mangalore, Udupi, where, one indulges in learning this full time. Earlier, they used to just do this morning till evening. They're just immersed in Yakshagana. It takes 2 to 3 years, and then some start performing with the same unit and becomes a repertoire there, and some go get into melas. Today, the same residential units have realized the importance of education also. So they send the children to the schools in the morning, and evening they come back and get into the practice of doing this. And that's also an exposure. They get to learn wide variety of things. Usually, somebody who's gone through this, they'll also know makeup, they'll also know how to tie things, they'll also know how to sing, they'll also know how to do this, because that's how they're trained. And then they pick one focus area. I'm going to stick to maybe just the Matale. Then they specialize in one of the things. Specializes, they practice more and indulge more in that. That's what it is. So that's definitely the biggest way of getting into this thing. There are, there are these kendras through this thing. Today, some institutions like Alvas and all have integrated in their college curriculum and everything. So there's also these spaces that's available in educational institutions, and there's also Yaksha Shikshana Trust that that's working across the South Canara belt to see if they can map an artist to a school and make it part of the schooling also, so that they learn. But usually you don't see people getting converted into a professional artist in some of these steps. And of course, when you come to urban side, there are like institutions like ours who run classes. And for us also, there are a few who will be really interested and they take it forward and get into create their own teams and do it. So that's a typical journey today. Earlier it used to be like, if you're interested, you just go in a mela and you get infused in the mela.
So it reminds me of my visit to Kuchipudi, which is a village as well. And that whole village is engaged in some form or the other. Somebody's making jewelry, somebody's making costumes, somebody is instrumentalist. And of course, there are dancers and there are continuous, the whole place is surrounded by people like this. In fact, that their Gram Devi is also Bala Tripura Sundari, who's the presiding deity of performing artists. So I want to know, is there a similar center or hub for Yakshagana artists, or it's spread across?
It's spread across. I mean, if you were to say the whole of coastal Karnataka is like that, it's become a part of culture, and that's what amuses me. Saying that, what did we do? Is it because it's associated with temple that it is so ingrained in the society, or what is it? I'm also very curious. but it's I would say the whole region is like that. Like every member in the family has some association with the art form. Yeah, they might be adherent fans who will go, you will see like how we hum maybe a film song or this thing. When you go talk to people, they're saying dialogues of their favorite artists, they're humming the songs of Yakshagana. It's that ingrained in the whole of.
Was there a particular community traditionally associated with Yakshagana?
Not really. But of course, there were some social groups that were excluded, which now, that's breaking. But it was not seen as only this community performs. Whereas in Bhutakola, it is there, that there is only a certain set of people who perform, who are allowed to perform, or who are allowed to learn. But Yakshagana is a little more diverse that way.
So let's come back to your organization. So talk about the evolution of your organization and what does it do and how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, so Yakshadegula is started by my father, K. Mohan, and his friends, I think 45 years ago, roughly. So it began like I was saying, it is so integral for a person from South Canada that Yakshagana is a part of their life. When few of them came here to work and study, they found that, that gap, they were missing the sound of Yakshagana, the music of Yakshagana. So they started making that effort to saying, as youngsters in the city, we should bring Yakshagana. And today, till today, unfortunate thing is people always say it's a coastal Karnataka. Whereas when we talk about Bharatanatyam or a Kathakali, we don't associate it to a specific region in Kerala or Tamil Nadu. It's seen as a state art form or a national art form. But here, that sense is still, oh, it is from this. So that was an effort. They said it should come. It's an art form where everybody can learn and enjoy from. So that's how they started bringing artists. And they were also enthusiastic. They've done in their childhood. They said we'll also do small roles with them, so that that's how it started, by bringing different artists, staging shows in the city, and then themselves forming a troupe to say we will also start performing, sourcing costumes, instruments, various other things, whatever it is. I don't think they thought of it to become such a big institute when they started it. They started with the sheer love for the art form and making that presence felt in the city. And it's evolved very organically with a team getting formed. Then we were children, and my father wanted us to learn. So the school started with literally me and my sister starting to learn in that. And today it's grown into its last 25 years. And for 25 years, we were teaching for free. It's only now we've charged a nominal fee, and it's not a compulsion. If you want to pay, you can pay. But it was just for the sheer love of the art form that.
Where are you located in Bangalore?
Bangalore, South Bangalore. Tyagaraja Nagar is where the institution is. There's a school, then there is a performing unit that also performs. We also work with schools across Karnataka to do short-term, long-term engagements with them to work. And we've also, like I said, we've done over 7,000 shows, a lot on social issues as well, talking about the current issues. How do we see? And we've also in the last 10 years, I've come into the picture more seriously to, the question at one point was like, how do I play this role? I mean, what is my role in this whole thing? And I was happened to start teaching in the school, and then just evolved with this. Now also I've joined hands with my father to take this beyond Yakshagana, also to say how do we support, because we also work with other artists and in Karnataka, to say the struggles are very similar. So if we can figure means to make different art forms of Karnataka or even beyond Karnataka more popular and more aspirational for children to start. So a lot of effort we also spend on building awareness. Right now, very specifically to Yakshagana, but eventually we want to spread it.
Wonderful. But just another curiosity question, since you spoke about you and your sister performing, was this not supposed to be male only performances?
It is a male only. It's called Gandukale. In fact, Gandu in Kannada means male. It's called Gandukale, but it's not. it's not male performance, it's actually masculine. If you see, it's a very masculine art form. There are a lot of jumping, sitting, this thing. And also, if you see Western Ghats, it's very thick. You can't imagine today there are roads and everything earlier as a safety, and it's also associated with temples. So even till date in the temple Mela, you don't see women being a part of it. So a lot of things
Yeah, even
made male.
even female characters are performed by men, right?
Yeah, even with Sangamam's event on Saturday, you will see a male performing a female role. So
Right.
that's how it is. And actually, even in fact, for my father, a lot of them told, why are you making this effort to teach your daughters? Because anyway, it's a male art form. Anyway, they will get married. So, and go off. But he said, I want them to learn. It's a skill more than for him. He's a visionary. He didn't see this as just an art form. He said there's so much that the children can get out of this. And that's how we got in and when I started teaching also, like a woman teaching is still like little, very few of them do it. Still, so a lot of them, I remember people calling me and telling, oh, now you got married, will you do it? And then when I was pregnant, they said, oh, now I think you have to stop. Now my child is 3 years old, I continue to do, but that is there. So, but it's difficult. It's not like very easy, but there are a lot of women now who also perform. In the last 2 decades, we've seen a lot of women performing.
Okay, great. So, I will finish this conversation by please tell us how can people get in touch with you or your organization?
So yeah, we have www.yakshadegula.com is there.
We'll put
Definitely
that in the
visit our
description.
website.
Yes.
Yeah, and we do post our stuff on Instagram and Facebook. So you can follow us there and write to us. And I can also share my number. So if anybody wants to
So,
get in
what
touch.
I want from you, as somebody who is trying to do whatever I can for the Indian art forms, is create a calendar of these events. If it can be published somewhere, maybe on your social media channels or your website, so that visitors, travelers can experience it when they are going. That will really help people who do not know.
It's a great thought. We will definitely look at it. I have to figure how to, because it's also so diverse, there's no structure into it. But I
But the
think it's a good
major temple
exercise.
ones, if you can
Yes.
list the dates and
Yes.
times, a date, place, and time, then it might drive a lot of enthusiasts through these places. And then
Absolutely.
social media does its magic.
Yes. Yes.
Right. Great, Priyanka ji. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge, your art form, and so much about Yakshagana. And I'm going to see your performance tomorrow. So we'll catch up. And I hope we can take it to a larger audience outside of Karnataka, to the rest of India, where there is not as much awareness about this art form. And once people see it, then they will obviously be enticed by it, and you know they'll keep coming back to see it. So thank you so much,
Absolutely.
and wish you all the best for all your endeavors to preserve art forms of India and Karnataka.
I think you're doing a great, this is a great initiative. All the best to you too. And would be happy to collaborate in whatever way to make your mission success.
Ji. Namaste.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us on Detours. You can also join us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Our handle is IndiTales, INDITALES. See you soon.